For tonight's Conversations with Great Minds, I'm joined by Axel Caballero. He is the founder and producer of Cuentame and mycuentame.org, a news and activism site focused on issues of importance to the Latino community. He also runs the Spanish-language opinion site metaforapolitica.com and is part of the Brave New Films and Brave New Foundation team. For the past decade, Axel has used visual and film campaigns to advocate on a variety of campaign issues, ranging from nuclear disarmament and environmental protection to immigration and human rights, with particular emphasis on Latin American affairs. And he's played an integral role on several electoral teams, both in the United States and in Mexico. He's also served as the Media and Community Relations Director for the Peace Education Fund and Peace Action West. He is a graduate in political science and international relations, as well as law and study and visual arts studies from the University of California in San Diego, and received his master's degree in international law and the protection of human rights from the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands. Axel joins us now from our studios in Los Angeles. Axel, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
Thank you for joining us. It's an honor to have you with us. What's your story, your personal story? How did you become an activist? What brought you to this moment in time?
My personal story, I'm originally from Mexico, from northern part of Mexico in Sonora. I was born and raised my first 10 years there, but I really am what you would consider a cross-border child, a new kind of generation that lived in both sides of the border and grew up in both sides of the border. My dad's American, my mom is from Mexico, and I always went back and forth. And I saw a lot of the issues that we're fighting for right now, particularly within the Latino community. I saw it growing up. I saw it while working in restaurants, going through college, while doing work at home and seeing friends and family migrate, from doing work in Arizona even when I was living there and going to high school there, and just seeing a lot of my fellow co-students and students in classroom and part of the soccer team, for example, and they being to a certain extent impacted and affected by the issues that we're fighting for today. So that's, I think, what, at least for me, how it started. There was a connection both on what I was living, what I was seeing, and particularly what we could do about it. I started seeing that there were opportunities to create change, to create and make an impact by really creating strong and powerful visuals and strong and powerful messages that resonated not only with my environment but with the community at large. And I think that that was a huge part of how I got involved in the first place.
And more recently, as you got into these campaigns, did you just show up and say, hi, I want to participate, or you know, you came out of college into
Yeah, what happened was once I graduated from college and I was active all through college, and then doing the graduate work, particularly in human rights, I started, getting very involved with different issues. When I got here in Los Angeles, particularly, and I got involved with an organization called Brave New Foundation and Brave New Films, and worked closely with Robert Greenwald, who really had important actions that he was doing, particularly through film. And I saw immediately the impact that could be done. And so a year later of working with him and with the organization, we kind of gathered what you would call the Latino intelligentsia within Brave New Foundation, a group of folks and individuals that realized that we could use those same tools. We can use that same kind of impact that was being had, and we can adapt it to what we're seeing in our own environment and kind of create a marriage between the Latino community and a lot of the issues that we're already advocating within Brave New Foundation. And so what happened was that we decided to create a community called Cuentame, a community for Latinos, by Latinos, but really the public in general, and that would use video and strong documentary campaigns along with powerful social media and create a community that was ready to mobilize into action. 2 years ago, this is what happened. Cuéntame means tell me your story or count me in. And we use visuals, and we use particular campaigns and issues to promote the activism, not only from ourselves, but also the community that we're involved with. As we started with a couple campaigns, and then suddenly Arizona hit last year, SB 1070 hit, and we knew that we had the opportunity to cause an important impact. We created a campaign called Do I Look Illegal? And it was really a campaign of awareness, but also of fighting back against what we were seeing as a trend in Arizona that later spread out through other states. And that immediately went pretty strongly across online and on the ground. We were able to mobilize, for example, place 15,000 T-shirts across the country with people wearing the signage, Do I Look Illegal, and then posting on their Twitter site, posting on Facebook, mobilizing on their local marches. Going to their local store with the shirts, capturing on images and video, and then sending us all that information, and then we were able to repost that and create a larger campaign. And as we developed more and more, we started growing more, and we were able to incorporate a lot more issues, not only immigration, but economic issues, corporate greed issues that were impacting directly, and especially getting feedback from our supporters on Cuentame.
That's spectacular. And thanks for correcting my pronunciation on that. It's, one of your...
Oh, no problem.
One of your main
it's
campaigns...
the little accent on the E.
Yeah, it's not my native language. One of your main campaigns is to bring attention to the Corrections Corporation of America, CCA. Here's a clip at one of the, a little piece of one of the videos you produced to educate the public about this issue. Let's show it to our viewers.
The detention of migrants is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
One in which immigrants are traded like products.
They are for sale to the highest bidder.
Who benefits and who profits? Corrections Corporation of America, or CCA, the GEO Group, and the Management and Training Corporation combined own over 200 facilities in the nation.
With over 150,000 bed spaces for a total profit of close to $5 billion per year.
Private prisons profit like a hotel. The more occupants that go in, the more money comes out.
You just sell it like you're selling cars, or real estate, or hamburgers.
Private prisons rely on anti-immigrant laws that guarantee them access to fresh inmates.
Here's how they
So, Axel, can you explain what the Corrections Corporation of America is and how it exploits our criminal justice system, and in particular Latinos?
Yeah, well, what we started seeing last year was after the campaign that I was talking to you about, and that a lot of anti-immigrant laws were being replicated across the country. We saw Utah having it, which we saw Texas trying to pass. We saw Georgia and Alabama and Florida. And so immediately when you see this type of domino effect, we know that there's something behind it, that there's a driver. And that driver was particularly both ideological and what we understood as for profit. And what I like to say, what we like to say all the time, is that whenever there is a social issue like immigration, is there's always someone trying to make a buck off of it. And that's what happened with CCA. CCA, Corrections Corporation of America, is the largest for-profit prison in the United States. They currently operate, along with the GEO Group, the second largest, over 150,000 bed spaces in this country. And the way they operate is that they set mega facilities, the Wal Marts of prisons in different small towns and cities and locales and states, and then they drop contracts with either the county or the state or the federal government, the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. And those contracts, of course, are being paid with our own taxpayer money. And the way that they do it is they have, for example, a facility in Georgia with 2,000 bed spaces. And so they drop a contract to get paid $200 a night for any individual that occupies that bed space. And so their main goal, their main intent is to drive more occupancy like a hotel. A hotel has its yearly budget, its yearly forecast of how many people they're gonna, of what the percentage rate of occupancy is going to be in their hotels. They have the same thing. In fact, in 2005, they had an annual report that said harder harder sentencing, harder enforcement, and harder laws, particularly around the drug war and drug policy and immigration, will drive our occupancy rates higher. And that's exactly what they're doing this year. They're partnering up with interest groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council, with politicians where they're hijacking all these state legislatures, and they're pushing for laws, for anti-immigration laws, and by far they deny this, of course, but they're pushing for those laws to make sure that their occupancy rate is high, and for that matter, to make sure that they make those $200 a night, and then that is tantamount to the $5 billion a year that the industry currently makes.
It's mind-boggling. Your Immigrants for Sale campaign also focuses on the role that ALEC plays in the private prison industry. Here's a quick shot of a piece that you did about this.
The American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, is an extreme right-wing membership organization comprised of state legislators and powerful multinational corporations, including the Corrections Corporation of America.
ALEC is the most active private prison lobbyist group pushing for anti-immigrant laws like Arizona's SB 1070.
Russell Pierce, like CCA, is an ALEC member, one with obscure ties to national white separatist neo-Nazi groups. During an ALEC meeting, CCA and Pierce crafted a model legislation that became, almost word for word, Arizona's SB 1070.
Whether people are undocumented or not doesn't matter.
As long as they fill the detention facilities for days, months, or even years.
SB 1070 and their copycat laws sprouting up across the country represent the perfect money machine.
So, Axel, how does ALEC get away with this?
Well, very easy. They have a lot of interest inside of their own organization. They're a membership organization that is comprised of big corporations, not only CCA, not only for-profit corporations, but we're talking the likes of Wal Mart, for example. We're talking the likes of Exxon, Philip Morris, big corporations that have an interest in some aspect of the corporate legislative process, as we call it. They also get money from the Koch brothers, of course, to promote a lot of their same policies around the nation. They constantly deny that they're a lobbying group, but time and again we're finding videos online available to everyone where they're proud of saying how they lobbied this person, and how they lobbied the other person, and how they're really throwing out money or connecting the corporation with the legislative process. And the way they do it is part of their membership is also legislators, state legislators as well as federal legislators. Every year they have conferences. There's one coming up in Arizona in November after Thanksgiving. There's another one in DC where they get together and they representatives from the corporations and representatives from the different legislative bodies as well as the different states and locales end up going to the same place, and they talk. And you can imagine what they talk about. They're not going to talk about how you're doing and how it was last week for you. They're definitely going to talk about legislation and how to push forward their agenda. And their agenda is usually an agenda that benefits corporations and puts corporations and for-profit ahead of people.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary story, and I understand about a third of all state legislators in the country are members of ALEC, and the vast majority of them are Republicans. I'd like to get into this whole concept, actually, of Mr. Guillermo Gomez Sanchez with you, and the issue of actual slavery in America in just a moment. We'll be back with more conversations with great minds with Axel Caballero in just a moment. Welcome back to Conversations with Great Minds. Tonight we're speaking with progressive activist and human rights advocate Axel Caballero. So, Axel, in a recent article, you tell the story of Guillermo Gomez Sanchez, who ended up serving 2 years in a detention facility owned by the Correction Corporation of America. You also profiled him in a short documentary. Here's a quick excerpt for our viewers.
El CEO que me andaba de ser del uno y dijo, no, yo no te voy a llevar. Y pero es que es una emergencia, llévame, porque cerró las dos puertas. Y le dije que quería ir y dijo que no. Entonces me agarré en el pantalón Mira un oficial y me dijo, ¿qué pasó? Pero pues el oficial no me dejó entrar al baño. Y de repente, pum, me dio una trompada, y después me dio otra, después ya vinieron ya más. Me golpearon y después ya no supe nada hasta que estaba en el hospital al siguiente día. Con un ojo, con este ojo así morado y chiquito.
Me sentía muy deprimida porque yo no sabía de él. Y yo sabiendo que él es enfermo y no saber nada de él.
Once he went into ICE custody, he went in front of an immigration judge. Within a month, the immigration judge realized there was issues maybe pertaining to whether Guillermo was even competent to help in his own hearing. And she ordered immigration authorities to have a competency evaluation. Immigration authorities asked for the court to close the proceedings temporarily, meaning there would be no future hearing until the evaluation was completed. And then immigration authorities didn't get the evaluation done. They forgot about him. CCA certainly profited from having Guillermo there.
Inmigración, ¿por qué no tenía? Esa es la pregunta que todavía no tengo la respuesta.
So Axel, brilliant filmmaking, by the way, that you're doing, or audio production, or video production, rather, whatever, however you would describe it. How prevalent are cases like that of Mr. Gomez Sanchez?
Oh, they're widespread, and in this particular case is a really sad and infuriating story. Guillermo Gomez Sanchez is a 50-year-old man that has a mental disability, an array of issues that he has, and so he doesn't understand a lot of the processes that happen around here. Mind you, he is a legal resident. He has documents here in this country, as well as his mom. What happened was he was at a convenience store, and he asked to borrow or to take a couple of tomatoes to the attendant there, and she didn't know what to say, and she said, yeah, go ahead, take it. A couple minutes later, the owner of the store followed Guillermo, and then they got into a small dispute. And somebody called the police, and he ended up being arrested for those charges. But what happened there is what we call a double jeopardy that's happening in our immigration system, because the first thing that happened is he goes into our criminal system, and immediately there's no understanding of his mental condition. There's no understanding of his ability to communicate effectively, and so he's sentenced to a year in prison. He spends a year in prison. So what happens when you have a green card, as you call it, is that when you're accused or convicted of a particular crime, in this case, the crime was that public dispute, you then go into an immigration system. But now what happens is that our immigration system is a criminal system. It's no longer just an immigration system, but it's another criminal penitentiary system. So he then goes into that system, and he's transferred over to private prison corporation, like CCA, who doesn't have the slightest need to tell people that this person has a mental discapacity and illness, and that he should be treated in a different manner. Why? Why should they? Because every night that he spends in that cell, it's $200 that they bank. And so he ends up spending about 2 years there, after already having served what was 1 year, and in between another 2 years. In total, it was 5 years that he was in prison for a dispute over tomatoes. And that is what's happening in our system right now, that our immigration system is leaving a void. There's no real policy in place, and because there's no real policy in place, corporations are taking advantage of it. They see the opportunity to make money, as is the case with CCA. And Guillermo's case is emblematic of many cases that are happening across the country. There's cases in Georgia where Stewart facility is the largest CCA facility in the nation. They house over 2,000 detainees. There's multiple cases there of abuse, of stories that you couldn't even think about. In fact, every day, on any given day, there's about 35,000 immigrants behind bars in the detention center. That doesn't mean that that's the only number. That means that on any given day, that's the amount in this country, meaning that some leave after being there months, sometimes years, and then a new flock of prisoners come in. And their sole purposes sometimes is because they got detained and they didn't have their driver's license. Another case like the Guillermo was that he was a dispute over tomatoes, or they didn't have proper documentation at the border. There's multiple cases, and on any given day, you have all these folks that are filling cells, and they're filling bed spaces, and that's making a strong amount of money for CCA and the GEO group.
It's extraordinary.
Which, by the way, their stock prices are the highest that they've ever been. Currently, for example, Wells Fargo manages 4 million of their shares, and each share is at approximately around $40. So that's approximately $160 million just of the shares that Wells Fargo manages. Imagine,
Incredible.
just in general, the amount of money that they're making.
Yeah, and on top of that, we think that slavery ended in the United States with the Civil War. But you suggest, we have a clip, but I'm not going to play the clip here. I'd rather just get your take on this. You suggest that slavery is actually making a comeback thanks to these harsh new anti-immigration laws and prison labor. Tell us about this.
Well, this is what's also happening, what we're seeing with both Georgia and Alabama, particularly Alabama as of late. As we know, the particular anti-immigration law there, HB 56, it's the worst in the country, and it really criminalizes not only your status, but it criminalizes your transaction or interaction with a person that doesn't have documents, and that creates a huge problem. In fact, one of the things that we saw as part of this segregation that is happening is that, if you want water services, you have to prove that you're in the state in a legal manner, or else you're going to get your water cut off. That's just the one part of it. The second part of it is that you're taken into prison, and what is happening there is that a lot of places that had a lot of migrant labor, documented or undocumented, like farms, like a lot of processing plants, among other areas, they're losing their employees at a record number. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands that have fled the state. And so they're leaving a whole problem for a lot of farmers in particular. And they need to fill that, or else their crops are rotting. So what is happening is that even the Secretary of Agriculture in the state, the Agriculture Commissioner suggested, John McMillan suggested, well, if you need labor, then we're going to go to the prisons to get the labor for you. I don't know where else or what other name to call it but slavery, because you're imprisoning the same people that are picking up your crops, you're putting them behind bars, and then you're making them work for free or for pennies. So if that is not slavery, then I don't know what it is.
And did I correctly understand something I read on one of your websites, that CCA will pay these people a very, very small amount for the work that they're doing, and then if they want to make a phone call to somebody, they have to pay $5 a minute to use the phone, and thus they suck the money back out of these people?
Yes, in fact, we have a video coming up next week, and I believe it's midweek, that focuses on Stewart Detention Center. And what we're hearing is that individuals who want to call their family, for example, outside, they have to pay ahead of time. And most of them don't have money inside of the prison, or their families can't get to them because their prisons are really far away. And so what ends up happening is that they have to work for it. They have to work within the facility, whether it is cleaning the toilets, whether it is sweeping or mopping. And they make a couple of bucks an hour at most. Sometimes I believe it's something like $10 a day, depending on the work that they do. But what's happening is that if they want to make a call, they have to buy these cards. And each card has a certain amount of minutes. And each minute, the card costs an amount, is like $10, $15 just to get the card, to purchase the card. And then, to make a phone call, and each minute costs $5. So an average 10-minute call can range you anywhere between $50 $50 and $75. That is more than they would make in a week's pay there at the facility. So a lot of the times is that all the work that they're doing it for calls, for folk calls outside. And what's sad about this is that this, you know, without trying to separate the inmates per se, or the quality or the reason why they're behind bars, but this is our immigration policy right now. This is folks that only came here to look for a better life, for better circumstances, and they're they're being put behind bars and making them pay for services that should be allowed just for human decency, for them to communicate, and not only that, but to communicate with lawyers, for example, to fix their cases.
Also, so a private corporation can make more profit. We have just a little less than 3 minutes left, and a bunch of questions I wanted to get into with you. Let me just toss a couple at you, and you can pick which ones you want to. The DREAM Act, I'm curious your thoughts on that. It seems in some ways that this is like, yeah, you can become a citizen if you become cannon fodder. I'm also curious about your thoughts. You were part of the Occupy Fox News protest in Los Angeles today, the Occupy LA movement. Your thoughts on that, if you want to take a shot at all of that. 2 minutes.
Definitely. With the DREAM Act, it was heartbreaking last year to get so close at the end of the year, and then have the whole barrage of media just pound and attack the Dreamer movement, especially young kids, 18, sometimes even younger than 18, that are out there on the street fighting for their own survival, and having that really using them as the scapegoats of something that is wrong, intrinsically wrong and broken in our political system is just a mistake, and a huge mistake, because they are the future. They are the future in a lot of our constituents, a lot of our cities, and a lot of our states. We're seeing positive steps, like it was in California, where the California DREAM Act got passed, and we know immediately that after it got passed, there was positive outcome out of it. So we believe that in a state approach, this might actually work. But we're still, I think the organizations in general are still fighting for federal legislation that would really make this a sensible policy, more so. As far as Occupy LA, it was very powerful today. Different groups, different organizations, and individuals that were from the Occupy LA movement showed up outside of Fox Studios to demand a couple of things, in particular, the support for the 1% versus the 99%, and that is a crucial thing when our media is standing behind those corporate interests and are using the airwaves to attack, and in particular our migrant community, to blame our migrant community, to blame Latinos for everything that is wrong in this country, and then go ahead and say, but who's right is these corporations, then they're not doing their job. They're not doing their job as part of building this democracy.
And it seems like it's also pervading now the Republican debates and everything else. Axel, we're out of time. Thank you, Axel Caballero. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. And I encourage everyone to visit facebook.com/Cuentame.
Okay, you got it.